You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Wednesday, May 29th, 2019. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we are talking about war. Now, we have already talked about the two types of anger that can lead to war. The first one is a just anger that responds to evil and motivates us to do something about that evil. The other one is a sinful type of anger that is concerned only with revenge and oftentimes seeks to hurt someone else to an extreme. That sort of anger should never lead to war. Yesterday, we started talking about the basics of war, things that our leaders need to consider while they are thinking about the possibility of war. And these things were that war needs to lead to peace, and also that it can be incredibly hard to predict if war will lead to peace or the underlying issues that might go along with the evil we are witnessing. Today, we're going to go through how our church, the Catholic Church, defines a just war. Now, a just war means simply a necessary war, a war that our church and our faith sees as necessary. Now, it's important that we say necessary. War is never good. In fact, the Catechism talks about war as an evil. In fact, killing or hurting or using any sort of force is the least ideal thing for us to do. We should only choose war when there are no other options. So let's go through the points that the Catechism provides for what needs to be in place for a war to be just. The first one is that the damage must be grave, certain. Grave and certain. Now, grave means that it is terrible damage to human life, damage to cities and nations, and also it must be certain. We can't just think, well, I think that this country is going to attack. It's probably going to happen. It needs to be certain, something that we have proof actually is going to happen before we do something or enter into war. The next one is that there needs to be no other options for eliminating the evil. Now, if there is a way to talk to another nation, a lot of times we try to negotiate or send a peacekeeping mission into a nation before war is declared. And this is so important. It is so important that we try every single possibility before we resort to war, before we put in our troops, endanger their lives with the intention of hurting or endangering the lives of a different country. There needs to be no other option. Every single possibility needs to be explored before war is declared. Now, number 3, the third principle that we need to investigate to see if a war is just is that success needs to be possible. We talked yesterday about how the point of war is to establish peace. And if there isn't the possibility of establishing peace through the use of force by going to war, then that war is not just. Now, this can be a really hard point because it sounds like we are just giving up, but it just is restraining us. If going to war will just make things worse, if adding more death and destruction to the situation will only make things worse, then that war is not necessary or justifiable through our faith. War needs to come to an end, and it needs to end in peace in order for it to be a just war. Now, the fourth one, and this is a very important one that we need to be evaluating often. The fourth principle to make sure that a war is just is that, yes, we're entering into the evil of war, but we cannot use more evil to eliminate the evil that is there. I know this is a little bit confusing, but here is what I mean. For example, in World War II, the Nazis were engaged in the horrific evil of exterminating a whole race of people through the use of concentration camps. Now, let's say that the United States decided that the only way to deal with these Nazis was to round them up and put them in our own concentration camps and do all sorts of horrible things to them, just like they were doing to the Jews and the Poles. Now, this would be a horrible idea and would be truly evil. We cannot stoop to these horrible levels of evil just to win a war. That is not what Jesus did, and that is not what we are called to do. We need to make sure that when we are engaged in a war, we are using only the level of force necessary. And so, Sprouts, here is your challenge, the same one from yesterday. As you can see, war is complicated, and we constantly need to be reevaluating if we are doing too much and if we are headed toward peace. These are complicated questions to answer. So please continue to pray for our world leaders, both the President of the United States, the leaders of the military, and the leaders around the world, that they can truly discern and lead us into wars that are necessary and hopefully lead to peace.
That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. One more thing, the Catholic Sprouts podcast will be taking a break from creating new episodes during the months of June and July. However, if your family relies on this podcast as much as mine does, I will be offering an episode recycled from the archives each day of these 2 months. They are my favorite weeks, and I think they are definitely worth listening to again, as the wisdom and truth of the Catholic Church never gets old.